Welcome back. And I've seen many of you who have been in anticipation of Samson's take, the very first in the first edition. I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to do a take this morning because of what I have come to know as regards the issues that we are going to discuss today. I'll shelve my take. I have quite a number of takes ready for you this year, including the very shambolic defense of the OSP, who has been working for how many years without salary, that you'll have 22 people in the presidency doing communication who will find room to justify because they have no work doing. 22 people. We are paying you with our taxes to communicate. What are you communicating? And to have the president, very disappointingly, he doesn't seem to impress any longer. In this austerity situation, still talking about building a certain cathedral, but for Parliament salvation, 80 million of your money would have gone into that in this situation where pensioners are literally, some of them are suffering right now. They are weeping and crying. Some of them are getting really sick because of what is going on. And you have a president in this situation who continues to go around, talking as if he doesn't know what is going on in this country. So I have some takes that I'll share with you, but today I'm absolutely not in the mood. So let's get to the issue of the bond and the matters arising, and ignore the take for now. When I deal with it, I'll deal with all those charlatans, the people who call themselves men of God, who are feeding fat on your tithes and offerings, and so don't know what they are about and go about, saying all sorts of things to the president. Instead of telling the president how their people are suffering, they are there telling him that you are naysayers for saying you should hold on with a cathedral. I mean, what kind of joke is this? And these people, they are bishops and prophets. You have no idea what this country is coming to and what some of the youth in your own church will do to you. You get to sit up. Right. So this morning, we're going to check the extent to which this debt exchange will affect the country, will affect your own pockets, and the sacrifice that you need to make. The economy itself, what will be its health, its state, after we are done with all of this. If the government is capable, is able to meet the deadlines to get the IMF, agreement, the board approval, and to get a deal for us, and we go through it, for how many years? What will life be like? Life will not be what it is today. Let's start getting real with it. It will not be what it is today. So how will life be like? And how can we ensure and help, to make sure that the pain is lessened through the situation? My guest this morning, Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabason, is Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Insurers Association. Dr. Edu Entry is Convener, Pensioner Bondholders Forum. He's a former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Elikplim Komla Agloyo is Associate Professor, Department of Finance, University of Ghana Business School. Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa. Senyor Hosi is Convener, Individual Bondholders Forum. Senyor Hosi, you know that man now too well. The man with Martin Pebu, whose rebellion has led to from 600 people to 1 million plus, who are now being given a voice, who have literally forced the finance minister to pause and say, okay, yes, I'll listen to you. Instead of zero, whatever, some people, I think you get 2%, right? So let's see how that can be bettered. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you also very much for making the time to join us on Newsfile, our very first edition.
Thank you.
Right.
Good morning.
Right. And I'll need you all to be patient with me. I'm going to bring on Bright Simmons first. And Bright Simmons is going to spend some 15 minutes in some presentation with a bit of an interaction to give us a setting perspective. And then after that, I'll bring all of you back on board so that we will begin the discussion. But before that, in the course of the week, there's been a lot of discussion about the debt exchange program. Let's listen to some of the names I've already mentioned, including the finance minister, who is making firm the promise that treasury bills will not be affected. And there are people who are asking him questions. How do we trust you? You have given how many promises and broken them? Let's listen to them.
Legitimate concerns, because there will always be a way in which the structure can be changed. As you saw with the banking institutions, further engagement, and we saw certain changes that we made to the exchange program. In the same way, we are also going to be looking at the individual bondholders to see what is sustainable and do certain adjustment that will be helpful. But I think once we all acknowledge that this debt exchange program is important for us to get a move from the SLA into a fund board decision, then the question becomes, how do we, quote unquote, burden share in the process? And how do we also acknowledge the idiosyncratic livelihoods of people versus the balance of the fund program? And so that's what we will seek to do before the end of the program, for at least 80% of us to join it. And I'm confident that we'll be able to harness that.
For the Dalton Thomases, and this is the third time this program has been extended, what do you tell the...
I think it's the second time, George.
Sorry.
Why is 3 so important?
No, I'm sorry. The concern is that, well, will this thing be extended again?
No, I don't think so. I'm confident that we'll get there. You know, we have done the staff level agreement, as you know. We met with the Paris Club membership, and we have given them till end of February for us to go through what we call the common framework, or some version of it, but that should be facilitated. And then we expect them to go to board in Washington in March. So really, we don't have that type of time, because as you know, George, usually in the first quarter is when we would have gone to the international capital markets for our usual Eurobond issuance. Now that market, it's not there for us this year. Maybe even next year, and therefore an agreement in the fund program is what one is using to be able to give the necessary comfort that is required. I think you heard the Public Accounts Committee or the Central Bank
import cover,
testify import cover, usable, forex about 1.5 billion, etc. So we need to ensure that the appropriate foreign exchange comes in at this critical juncture, and that's why it's incumbent of all of us to understand, try and balance what we have to give with what will happen if we don't get a fund program going. So yes, I'm confident that we will negotiate ourselves into something that is sustainable and balanced.
We are still in what English word are we still dreaming, or we are still hoping that, we wouldn't be roped in, you see, because it can't be true. We are still in that land that it can't be true, it cannot be true. Then how do we survive?
If you juxtapose this in the general political representation of the past, that they will never go to the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank and the other institutions. You don't know who to believe again. I will get my money. I won't wait 15 years. Even if it means going to the courts and stay there forever.
Government bonds has been a trusted partner all this while. But we are in a very difficult situation that if we don't work together to redeem the market, we may all crash. And that is where we are. It's like when you are sick and you have to take a bitter medicine to get better. It's difficult to take the medicine, but as you drink the bitter medicine, by the next day or two, you begin to get well. This is where we are.
I don't even know how we will survive if they include us.
You say your husband hasn't been talking.
No.
How has this affected him?
He barely sleeps at night. He barely talks. Even if you want to have a discussion with him, he hardly responds. I'm young. I don't want to even lose my husband. Please.
Maybe the minister himself making the decision or making the statement at the very outset was not in full control of all the facts. Maybe. And that is why maybe I support the cause that, and well, I keep repeating that nothing can take the place of further consultation, deepening and broadening consultation for people to have a buy-in, because it's about livelihoods, it's about life.
The debt exchange has become critical to whatever would happen in the economy. Now, we are all witnesses to what's happening with the program. Initially, individual bondholders were excluded, and we targeted unions and their pensions. Then the government extended the deadline, taking out the labor unions and their pensions. What I hear is that government has gone back to try and persuade labor to come back into the debt exchange. I don't see that one happening anytime soon. So to all intents and purposes, we are going to see a further extension of the deadline by January 31st. So there's too much confusion. Trust has been lost, and we have to take a step back, reset, and then get this done before we can see a clear path to restoring macroeconomic stability.
The problem I have with all these is that the government should come out one time after he's done his research with committees and everything and say, this is the way we're going, not change your position from one day to the other. Because pensioners complain, okay, this one is not part of it. Because this one, we are looking at it and so, why? Get grace with the full facts and come out and then explain to the people one time, this is why we're doing it. And if you have to even withdraw, come back and say that we had to change because we've realized that so and so, and apologize for it. Because you can't just throw any information to the people. It has to be on sound basis, and you, of course you can make mistakes, but at least come out openly and apologize for it, because this is not what I said. Because certain things, we won't go to IMF, then we'll go to IMF. We won't do haircut, then we'll do haircut. Really, that's not the way to respect Ghanaians.
Government has pretty much wrapped up on what it wants to change. There's been a lot of back and forth from the bankers' perspective, which is fed into some of the changes that came through. So that has also happened. So we wait to see. It's 16th, so we have a few days to go. So wait to see. We are now going to bake in all the changes and so on and see how it pans out. Well, if they give it to us, we'll be very happy. We can't pay and therefore we're in trouble. So if there will be cancellation, it's also always one of the conversations that go on when people are distressed, whether some of it can be forgiven. So if we can get that forgiveness, all the better. But for now, what we know is what's on the table is for the debt exchange, which basically means that you term out or you try to, we are in default, as it were, we are in default, and we just having an agreement, orderly agreement to try and pay back what we owe.
Right. So those you have heard include, Ken Oforiatta himself, Antonio Kese. You've also heard Mark Asibe-Yeboah. You heard John Kuma, Dr. John Kuma, and the rest of them. I suppose that if you watched that interview with Kenneth Oriata and George Riafe on the PM Express, you can clearly tell that there's a point that the country is coming to, but they need to be a lot more forthright in telling us what is in this, all of it for us. Let me begin with Bright Simmons. And as we understand, after COVID, the G20, the Paris Club, decided to see if they could do something for certain, distressed countries. And as we understand, there are those that are seeking debt restructuring, and Kenneth Oriata was talking about that, or what they call debt reprofiling, including and subsequently maybe debt cancellation. He spoke about that. We have had Chad, Ethiopia, and Zambia, who have made the attempt to get some, reprieve from these countries, so to speak, the G20 countries. Now, we understand that what is happening now may not be new to Ghana. We have Uruguay as an example. We have Jamaica, Argentina, Greece, and a few other countries have gone through this. Bright, help us with your research and study and observation so far to try and see comparatively where is Ghana in these circumstances. How does it look like for us?
Thank you very much, Samson. I hope you can hear me clearly in the studio.
Very clearly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for helping us convey the results of our research at Imani over the period of months that these matters have been topical. So what I'm going to be doing is, as you've pointed out, try and situate Ghana's specific experience in the broader context of these debt restructurings around the world. It is true that other countries have gone through very similar experiences as we have, but we should not try and suggest that a sovereign debt default, a government saying that it cannot pay its creditors, is some kind of normal occurrence. It's not really very normal, especially when the government is forced, because of circumstances, to restructure both the domestic debt, the debt that it owes to its own citizens, as well as the external debt. In fact, in the last 10 to 15 years, you will not find more than 10 of such episodes. You more likely find something like around 5 of such episodes around the world. You can also see from the graph on the right-hand side of my screen that the whole idea of restructurings and defaults have actually been dropping around the world significantly. So we've moved from nearly 100 debt restructurings in the 80s to something in the region of about 30 in the last decade. The second point is that Ghana's current approach, which is based on this headlong rush, is fairly abnormal. It's not really common for countries to seek to restructure their debt at the speed at which Ghana is going. So if you recall, the first time the industry, the financial industry and investors were told upfront or forthrightly that Ghana is definitely going to default was in 2nd December. And at that time, the government expected to get a deal in 2 weeks, because it launched the actual process on 5th December and then said the deadline was 19th December. This is unprecedented, never happened anywhere in the world. So if you look at Barbados, for instance, which is one of the most recent, where they've done both domestic and external, so very similar to ours, it took 18 months, and the government spent many, many months building the consensus that was necessary before officially launching the debt exchange. And often, when you do that, it takes a couple of weeks and you are through, if you already have the consensus. So most of the things that the government is doing now, it should have been doing months ago. The only reason this has happened is because the government persistently refused to face up to the fact that debts were unsustainable, even when its own technocrats had told it after the government's own debt sustainability analysis many months ago that the country's debt was unsustainable. We did not have to wait till we needed to quickly go to the board of the IMF in order to launch this. You look at Grenada, which is also similar to our situation, about 30 months, but Jamaica for both incidents about around 30 months, And the average in the Caribbean, which is the region in the world that has seen the most debt restructurings per capita, is about 13 and a half months. So this 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have to do this quickly, is just completely unprecedented. Never happened anywhere in the world. And it's important that you put that in context because it explains some of the challenges we are having. The second critical point to note is that we are also putting the cart before the horse, as I've tried to explain. Normally, you have your informal understanding before you rush headlong to officially launch the program, because the unofficial understanding that will have gone into the design. So when you finally launch the program, it's only the smaller creditors who typically will not have had the forum to engage with you extensively that you are dealing with. The experience that we are currently going through is entirely identical to what Argentina went through in 2020 when it decided to use our approach that we are using, which is unilaterally design their own program somewhere with their own consultants and then tell investors that this is it, and then hope to revise it and negotiate over time. So on 15th February 2020, Argentina announced a very similar program to what we are currently ongoing in Ghana, except of course that it took the time to actually go to Parliament and pass a law to guide the process. Then on 9th March 2020, the Parliament the government, having passed the law in Parliament, created administrative procedures that was going to guide the program. So you can see that even in Argentina, which I am criticizing, they took about a month after the legal authority had been given by Parliament to design the program. And then on 21st April, after a very short period of consultations, they launched the program. By 8th May 2020, so similar to Ghana, given about 3 weeks, here is the program, 3 weeks, come on board. When they hadn't spent enough time doing the consultation, they achieved only 20% participation rates. 20%. That is to say, only 20% of creditors or 20% of holders of 20% of the debt. Sorry, only holders of 20% of the debt they want to restructure had agreed. So that's very significant because exactly the case that we are seeing in Ghana. Rather than deal with that situation, the government then tried to use moral suasion to force investors on board. They went to get the Pope to intervene. It didn't do anything. They had to come back and work with creditors to do what is often called co-creation, where you sit down with them and say, here's all the data. Here is why we have to spend this much. Here is why we cannot cut this expenditure. Here is why, therefore, we want you to give up your wealth in order to help the government as a whole. Remember, a bond is like any other property. It's like government coming to you, Samson, and saying that, we are having a lot of difficulties. You have 2 houses. Why don't you sell one and give us the money? Or you have 3 cars. Why don't you sell 2 and give us the money? There's no difference between that and what is going on now. So if the government is trying to get you to spend more than, you're already committing taxes, you're already going to be affected by inflation, the macroeconomic condition is going to affect you just as it's going to affect everybody else. But the government is saying, because you have a little bit of property that is easier to seize, give me that property and let me use it to sort the situation in the country. It requires that you take time to work together to understand why you need that kind of assistance. And so eventually Argentina then moved through the motions, and on 28 August 2020, they expand some critical elements out of that particular exchange offer they had made, such as something called the Pac-Man strategy, which was going to make it easier for the government to default later because of the new elements that introduced into the debt that it was trying to restructure. So eventually, after going through all of that in September 2020, remember, this started in February 2020. In September 2020, they finally managed to get 95% of investors to commit to 99% of the principal that the government now wanted to restructure. In short, and then it was only then that they decided to then tackle the domestic front, because now they had stability, and they managed to get 99.7.5% of domestic investors. All that Ghana is doing, really, there are 2 things you are looking at. How much money does government want private sector people, and in some cases, some state-owned companies, to give it above the taxes and other conditions that it has set that allows citizens to contribute? So every citizen has to contribute something, right? Increases in VAT and things like that. But now I'm saying that some specific people must go beyond that and take their property and give it to it to help relieve the economy. Now, the question that then arises is, to what extent are those people involved in ensuring that this works? And if you look at the Belize experience, which is not that different from us, and it's also quite recent, When the government, having gone through all that processes, all the processes that I've indicated, made the announcement on November 9th, 2016, it then had to proceed to make adjustments to liquidity profile, how much money the investors will be getting in the new arrangement, in order for a revised agreement to then be reached. And they had 2 months to recraft, even though they had spent about a year working on consensus. The fourth point that I think is critical is this issue around, if today you are telling me that I should sell my car or sell my house because the country is in such dire straits, I should take my property and give it to you as government, beyond all the other commitments I make as a citizen, then I'm interested in knowing whether going forward this is going to become standard, because we know that once a country defaults, the likelihood that it will default again increases. So on average, countries that they have defaulted once have then gone on to default almost 3 times in about a space of about 10 years. So given that fact, the investors are typically interested in protections. So when we have a situation like we have today, where the government, rather than providing additional protection, says that, no, I want to make it easier to default next time, you are likely to face resistance. Fifth point, and that is that the government is also demanding a lot more money than is the case in most other places. This is a big chart which gives you a very comprehensive view of how this has happened in many, many countries around the world, as you can see on the screen. The point that I want to emphasize is that how much of the debt is government trying to restructure? So how much of your debt are you saying, because I'm under a lot of pressure, I want to change the terms to make my life easier? So if you look at it, Ghana's situation, which is almost 65% or so of the debt that is trying to restructure, is closer to only countries like Dominica and to a certain extent Argentina. But for the most part, most countries, even Russia, which is often criticized for having had a very harsh restructuring, restructured only about 32%. Most countries, Serbia did about 30%. Grenada did 53%, Belize 47%. So we are trying to restructure a bigger chunk of our debt than a lot of countries have had to do. The 7 point, is that our domestic debt exchange also actually affects investors more heftily than a lot of other restructuring that have gone around the world. So here's another example where we list some countries and how much losses the investors face. The government has tried to focus on the fact that it has not formally said it's cutting principal, but I don't know how you calculate it. Face value reduction is just one approach where you say, I'm going to pay only 70% of the debt back. The more important part is the NPV losses, the losses that I face, regardless of whether you reduce the face value or not. And when you take that into account, Russia, depending on where you were, about the median was about 50-something%. Some people get only 46% of losses. Ukraine in the range of about 18%, 59%. In Ghana, because of high inflation in Ghana, some investors are estimating loss of up to 77%. I have seen local investors take their portfolio and show 88%. So it's huge and massive. We are talking of countries like Jamaica, which we try to compare with, doing about 10 to 15% NPV losses, 8.6%, and Nicaragua doing about 25%, etc. So we are on the high range in terms of how much investors are going to lose. And then you look at our public debt versus some of the other countries' public debt, the burden, for which reason you need such massive, and you need to cause such massive losses to investors. And you see that we are not, we don't have the same burden as those countries that are giving investors a smaller haircut. Like Barbados had a debt to GDP ratio of over 150%, Jamaica 140%, Greece 140%, and we are comparable to some of the countries that have way bigger public debt to GDP. So in simple terms, we are asking investors to do way more than most other countries have asked in circumstances such as this. It means, therefore, that losses to investors is much lower than investors nowadays are used to seeing. So the average nowadays, since the last 10 years, is around 63% of recovery. So after the debt restructuring, the investors get about 63% of their money back. We are creating situations where they might get less than 35% back. Were you talking to me?
My guest on the Zoom, please, if you are unmuted, please mute. Yes, right, go on. The lessons that we need to pick from elsewhere.
Yes, the last couple of minutes, what we also see is that a lot of the countries attempt to use an arrangement in which the government participants or the public sector actors in the financial industry absorb more of the shock. And I'll come to this point again because it's important. So in Barbados, for instance, the way they designed it, when you finally look at the output, you find out that the public sector on the whole was getting about 55% haircut. Private sector as a whole was getting about 29% haircut. So that is something that we need to start looking at, but I'll come back to you on that point in a second, around the public sector share versus the private sector share, even if you are doing a debt restructuring. Secondly, the truth of the matter is that you do need some laws in place for this thing to be truly effective, because it gives clarity. And most countries that have done this, they've gone to parliament and tried to create a framework. Why? Because two things. One is these unilateral CACs, collective action clauses that the government is trying to impose through private contract, and it's not even willing to pay for the creditors, especially the domestic creditors, to organize in order to be able to negotiate properly. These collective action clauses, which simply means that they're trying to introduce things in the contract where action by some creditors will affect everyone. Because of the fact that we don't have the space to think through the contractual arrangement too well, it makes sense to have the general laws made that govern it. And that's what Greece did. I've seen the opinion that the Attorney General has given on this matter, and I've discussed it with other analysts. And our conclusion is that the Attorney General was answering the wrong question. The issue is not that whether you can go to Parliament to pass a law to dispossess people of their property, which is what he spent most of his time looking at. The issue is whether in a period where the government itself is undergoing bankruptcy, we need laws similar to what we normally put in place when private people are going through bankruptcy. Take the case of the banks, for instance. In 2016, we passed a special law, we passed a law in which were special provisions for dealing with a situation where a bank has to be closed down or restructured. Now, when we were restructuring banks in this country, there were banks that were operating in this country before 2016, but the law was still used for an orderly resolution. So the fact that we need laws now to govern what should happen in a bankruptcy situation where the debtor is the government does not mean that we should pass laws to retroactively dispossess people, which is what the Attorney General spent his time talking about. No, what we need is laws like was passed in Barbados, was passed in Greece and elsewhere, that creates the certainty among investors as to what can happen in any period where the government finds that it cannot pay its bills. And in Barbados, the law goes much further to expand the body of legislation that affect even municipal arrangements and things like that, how it will differ from central government and the like. The other thing that also happened in Barbados was special arrangement for pensioners. So they decided that because of the liquidity issues, they were actually going to also introduce a provision in which they will give lump sum money to pensioners. And pensioners receive about $30,000, etc., depending on the circumstances. So there were special arrangements that were made to accommodate pensioners. The last major point is that the government's posture appears to suggest that it has a very strong BATNA. BATNA is what we use in negotiating theory to mean that if investors don't sign up, they are going to be in trouble more than it's going to be in trouble. And that's not the case. The government position is much weaker. Individual investors are in a much stronger place. So it's incumbent on the government to sit down with them and design something in which they feel that they are part of designing than try to impose unilateral action on them, because it doesn't have that button. Its circumstances are pretty dire. Why? Well, take some of the specific instruments that it's trying to restructure, the ESLA debt, the Dache Trust. Take a good look at how they were designed. They are designed such that a creditor that is truly determined can actually go and garnish tax revenue, because some of those debts are overly collateralized. The collateral is more than actual liabilities, especially now that we've seen significant mark-to-market losses in the industry. Secondly, the government claims that one of its instruments, its punitive instruments, is that it will apply a risk weight of 100% to the debt that you don't give up. So if you refuse to participate, then all of a sudden your bonds, they will add risks to your bonds such that its value is less. And this is particularly targeted at the banks. The truth is, if you did that, and then you declare that the banks were therefore undercapitalized, and you ask them to go and raise the money, they can't raise the money. What are you going to do? Close down half the banks? So all the government's punitive arrangements, they are effective in a situation where there are few holdouts. so that you can actually say that, okay, for these two banks, they are recalcitrant, I'll close them down, and I'll not destroy the entire industry. Where you have 30% of banks refusing to do it, you cannot close 30% of banks, because the contagion will destroy the entire financial industry. So in those circumstances, you cannot even use your punitive instruments. And if you look at all the punitive instruments the government truly have, none of them are effective. So if your punitive instruments are not effective, and therefore you don't have any strong partner, why adopt the kind of posture that the government has adopted, which is essentially that we have to ensure that we simply do what it is telling us to do, or we will suffer the consequence. That cannot work. In worst case scenario, all Ghanaians will suffer the consequences, not just 1 point something million debt holders. So in those scenarios, I just don't see the basis on which the government feels that it has a stronger position. Last critical point is that, yes, it is true that the government has significant holdings in the financial industry. So it has some insurance companies, it even has some financial services players on the financial services industry, in the capital markets and the rest of it. The truth, though, is that if they decide to break ranks and decide to accept truly bad terms, as some of the banks have shown, that if you do this, our balance sheets are going to be ripped to shreds, they become uncompetitive immediately. So if GCB or one of those other institutions decide that for us, we are going to take on the government offer, regardless of what the rest of the industry does, well, the industry just waits for them to reduce their income and outcompete them. And if they get totally outcompeted, that really is the end. So what does this all mean? In summary, all this means is very simple. The government has only one optimization equation. It can reduce the amount of liquidity relief it wants. That's how much it wants these rich people or these not so rich people and these pensioners to give up to it in order for it to, lower its current burden. It can reduce the amount it wants in order to increase the participation, or it can stay where it is and lower the participation. There's no other way around it. And if it continues at the pace at which it's going, then it's going to get maybe about 30% participation rate, which will still correspond to roughly 30% of liquidity relief, simply meaning that today, the government is trying to get something in excess of, in the beginning, it was trying to get in excess of $2 billion relief in only 2023, this year, from private people giving them the government that money to reduce its burden. It may not get that. It may get something around 700 million or something like that. Now, the point is that to take into account how much the government gets in taxes in major categories and use that to compare. So if you take personal income tax, it gets about $1 billion a year. If you take corporate income tax, it gets about $1.3 billion a year. If you take oil and gas, it gets about $1.2 billion a year. Now, compare it to what it is asking the likes of the banks and the brokerages to give. Much more. So even if they give the government half of what it's asking, it's still more than it can raise in taxation. And the argument that we are trying to make the government understand is that the liquidity relief it seeks, it may not get all of it from private investors. It may have to come back and readjust the entire proposal and re-optimize so that maybe it cuts more of its expenditure and other such circumstances. Thank you very much.
Very much, Bryce Simmons is Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa. Now, Bryce, just a few issues here. We had learned that we may have had, a more reasonable situation to deal with if this government had been proactive from the very word go. That's how come it was too late at the point that it felt it now had to come to, grasp with the circumstances and declare that we're going to the IMF. We know that, for example, the bond markets, had been shut to Ghana. So it was shut to Ghana. This year, as we understand, it's still shut to Ghana. Next year, it may also be shut to Ghana. And that is very serious. Now, if the countries that you're looking at, we are looking to get 80% buy-in of these bondholders. And they are doing, in the least, 13 months of consultation, 30 months of consultation, 18 months of consultation. And we announced our own, I think, on the 5th of December. And here we are. But our situation is different, isn't it? We are in dire straits. And the government needs to get the IMF board approval and they have February to deal with that. So what are the options for the government really when you are talking about prolonged time rather than rush?
Well, yes, we sympathize with the government that in these circumstances, it faces a very tough timeline because of how it's arranged things. But first, we have to all accept that it was the government that decided that it wouldn't go to the IMF. It was the government that decided that debt restructuring was not in perspective, that if that situation was not very dire. When we all know, because all of the frameworks that are used to determine whether a country's debt is sustainable or not is public knowledge. So many analysts in Ghana had used that framework to declare Ghana's debt unsustainable for many, many months. The second point is that given our reserve position and the low confidence in the economy, it will help if the government could expedite this. But then the only way you expedite this is to consider three things. One is that maybe you will not get all your liquidity relief in one leap. Maybe you need to wait for investors to recover some of their losses. So you accept a smaller liquidity relief now in the hope that bond prices may pick up. So when you come back now and you want to do another readjustment in the future, the total losses between the first exchange and the second exchange is not that bad, which is what Jamaica did. Initially, when the government suggested we were going to go the Jamaica route, that's what I thought. I thought they were going to do a shallow restructuring and then in a few years come back and do another restructuring. There are pros and cons to both approaches, because some will say, let this be the last restructuring. But maybe sometimes the way it works is that you do a shallow restructuring, bond prices recover, so investors, some of the losses they have already made. Remember, every investor has already made losses of more than 30 to 40% in some instances already. Keep that in mind, that this is not just the losses the investors are facing. They have already made losses. So maybe bond price recover and you come back and do another one, and the total set of losses are not too much. So that's one option. The second option is that you agree that, yes, the IMF will not give you a deal until you can show substantial progress with your creditors. So in that, for your negotiating position is very weak. Given that fact, what you need to do is build national consensus around recovery. So essentially, get people to feel that, oh, truly, Ghana is in a period of crisis and we all have to work together to fix this problem. The challenge is that the government's narrative so far has not been like that at all. Listen to major government officials, and it all appears as if things are completely fine. This is a temporary blip. This is some administrative thing we are doing. This is not a national crisis.
Right.
If you keep to that approach, it's very difficult to ask people to work with you to make massive sacrifices. So the same time you are building cathedrals and you are announcing major initiatives, you are claiming that things are so bad that you can't pay. It's very difficult to justify that. Then the last quick point is that even if you decide that you're going to default, it doesn't give you the IMF deal, because the IMF deal will not be based on the back of a default. And on top of that, if you default, it doesn't mean that people are not going to get their money. Argentina defaulted in the early 2000s. People spent 14 years in the courts, and some got all their money back. So you don't really have alternatives that are plausible. In those circumstances, just simply work with people and bring them together as you're starting to do now.
Yeah,
to say, how do we collectively do this?
Okay. So now that you clearly, agree and admit that, our situation may be a little different because we have time. Time is not our friend. How do you expect the investors, to their attitude in all of these processes? The individual bondholders, they say a complete no. Just exempt us. You listen to the finance minister, he says there cannot be a situation where there can be a complete exemption for everyone, or a complete exemption for anybody. So I don't know, from the way you are looking at it in the Argentina situation, because of the approach, kind of do my own thing and dump it on you. And I don't know, let's be frank about it. This government has been very poor at this for a long time. Talk about Ejapa, talk about e-levy, Imani and the rest of them continue to talk, but it appears nobody is listening, and now see what has come upon us. So in this situation, and as we know, they have gone to the Paris Club also. Zambia is there. We understand there's been such a slow pace in movement, very delaying situation. Our import cover, as we understand, 1.5, 1.5 months. So our situation is very critical. We can't go to the Eurobond market, where we used to go, is shut to us.
Yes, you are right. But you see, start off with what the government's program is still on track for one reason. The highly regulated financial sector stakeholders cannot simply say they're not going to participate. So regardless of what happens, the banks will participate, for instance, right? They just have specific interests that they want aligned. But why are the banks also willing to do so? Because there are specific concessions that make sense in their case. For example, the government says it's going to put up a liquidity fund. Of course, it hasn't found the money, but at least it has a plan to do about $1 billion of support, which is extra and independent. Now ask yourself, what are the individual bondholders getting? So if the government is willing to make all these concessions, change regulatory rules. In fact, the funny thing I realized was that in Barbados and Jamaica, because of this fact, they tightened regulatory rules to prevent problems in the we are saying, no, we actually have regulatory forbearance. All of these are pegs, right? These are, ways in which you're trying to get the banks on board, because the banks are the biggest deal makers in this case. Now, the individual bondholders are saying that why should we just simply accept something without similar concessions? I think the government should have made those concessions earlier. The problem right now is issues of trust. The individual bondholders just don't trust the government. So it might make sense that if the government creates a truly national platform and brings on board people of the highest esteem in the religious community, in the traditional community and the rest of it, as part and parcel. And that's what Jamaica and Barbados did, which is they tied the debt issue and its restructuring to overall national economic recovery. So in Barbados, they created the BERT, which was the National Recovery Program, and said, okay, now that we've come to you and taken your houses and your cars to go and sell, to go and solve our problem, you are now a stakeholder. So how we manage the economy going forward, you have strong views. So come and be part of a national monitoring committee going forward. So what I think people like Senyos and the rest are saying is that if we're going to give you a penny, then I'm going to be there to make sure either one, this doesn't happen again and bankrupt me, or two, we find ways to get our money back because the economy rebounds. But I don't trust that you do the thing you claim you are doing. So I'm saying that the individual bondholders will not act unless trust improves. And trust will not improve with simply come to a technical committee and give your view.
And from where you sit, how do you estimate time it will take for the government, even in this circumstance, to get the buy-in of stakeholders? As we know, the banks are afraid that there's an estimated impact of about 65 billion, that they are going to be affected. So this is no joke for them at all, and we're going to be speaking to them shortly. So what's your estimation? Will we meet the February deadlines we are looking at?
When it comes to the bulk of that industry, the bank, the security services, securities industry, they have very specific technical issues that must just be resolved. They don't want the interest rate the government is offering. They don't want to make the bonds easier to default next time. They don't want to create a situation where the valuation gap between the old bonds and new bonds just don't make sense and things like that. All of these are simply cost to liquidity relief. The government doing it for them means it gets less money. Simple. It should just go ahead and come to some settlement, which will lead to it losing some liquidity relief. If it does that, it will get the bulk of those people. Then when it comes to those that are asking for total exemption, it's a much harder challenge. My view would be that you do what you can to get the relief you can. First, in order to meet the IMF situation, it only will work if you convince the IMF that you will do the fiscal consolidation that will pay for the liquidity relief you've given to the industry and the exemptions that you've granted in the interim.
Right.
So I think that's up to the government now to take that decision.
Okay. My final question to you will be, we have heard, for example, Franklin Cudjoe earlier on suggest that if we are not careful, we'll be going to the Sri Lanka situation. What exactly is that situation? And from your analysis and observation, is that likely for Ghana?
So the Sri Lanka situation is that what started as a debt crisis becomes a fiscal crisis, becomes an economic crisis, and then becomes a national security crisis. So it's the progression. We are where we are now. We are not yet at the level of even a total economic crisis, because as the government has frequently said, the lights are still on, people are still being paid, there are no queues in the shops. If things continue, we could move to a full-blown economic crisis. If that happens, you could have national security implications. I don't think Ghana is there because obviously we don't have a full-blown economic crisis yet. So to talk less about a national security crisis. So I think that we have a lot more room to be reasonable and to come to a consensus. If the government wants speed, it must give up liquidity relief.
Brian Simmons, I buy one of the safest securities, Cocoa bill, and yes. I'm expecting that it will mature this month. It matures. I have seen that the money has hit my account. I go there, the bank tells me they have, taken the money again without my, as it were, consent, and even informing me and send it to the government, so to speak. You say we are not there. How do you read what is happening now, where the institutions unilaterally are dealing with people's lives this way?
It's very unfortunate that happened because, like Dachi and Esla, people had specific contracts with specific entities. They didn't have a contract with the central government. For the central government to now be, run around and state-owned enterprises are being treated as if they are just, we know in practice they are, but legally these are separate institutions. So if Cocoa Board wants to pay its creditors, the government has to be. Of course, some of those obligations have been deferred to the government or extended to the government because of the precarious situation that these state enterprises are. And it's true that some of these special purpose vehicles are just shells. My argument is that notwithstanding, we are not yet at a level where we have a full-blown economic crisis, but we can get there. A full-blown economic crisis is literally, as we said, what happened in Sri Lanka, where you have people not being paid, you have shops running out of goods and routes in the streets. Then you get to a national security crisis where the president literally runs away from the Jubilee House. We are not there. It's objectively and evidently we are not there. So we have a lot of room still left. And there's also a lot of legitimacy still left in the government. It's still issuing treasury bills and people are still buying them. Though, some entities must buy credit bills. A lot of those that are buying must not buy. They don't have a regulatory requirement to buy. So the government even still has credit. In those circumstances, why do you allow things to degenerate further?
Bright, sorry, but I said my last question, but I think 1.5 billion dollars import cover, and you say we are not at any point, and we don't have the Eurobond market. We don't have the Eurobond market where we usually would have gone to when we got to such a place.
We are in a dire fiscal crisis. Let me be very clear what I'm trying to explain. We are in a dire fiscal crisis. The government's finances are in a terrible state. That notwithstanding, because we are still in that process of unfolding, it has not totally wrecked the economy. Because if it had, you will see the evidence as we've seen elsewhere, right? So we are in a similar situation like Zambia, maybe a bit worse than Zambia, but that's not a full-blown economic crisis yet. And so I'm qualifying my words. I'm saying that the situation is really bad, but it's not a point where it's not salvageable. Given that it's salvageable, the government has the chance to retrieve from the brink, right? The things that the government must do are not desperate yet. If we wait for a couple of weeks of this recalcitrance, the government's position will now be desperate. If it becomes desperate, you will see it more evidently around you. It will not be the kind of situation you're having now. You have rolling blackouts.
Some of you had an expectation that the debt service suspension initiative by the World Bank would have been taking advantage of. That didn't happen, and that has worsened our case. What's the faith that you have that things may not get as bad as should be expected?
You are right. I think there's also been some confusion about what the government is doing with the G20 common framework versus what it's doing with the external bondholders versus what it's doing domestically. We have to separate the three. The restructuring that the Paris Committee or the Paris Club can offer at this stage, given all that is going on, is primarily bilateral debt. So in 2021, we spent about maybe 4.7% or so of our debt service on bilateral debt. That was the composition. It was 4.7% of all our debt was bilateral debt. So the G20 restructuring and those things are not very material to our situation now. Right now, we're dealing with local investors who don't want to be made bankrupt because the government is bankrupt. And we are dealing with external bondholders who don't always listen to what the Paris Club says.
Because already we don't really have the money, and yet we are spending up to 70% of what we generate to service debt.
Exactly. So that is not totally sustainable, and the government is doing multiple things to try and fix it. The challenge is that on the home front, the government is not willing to listen to the people that are now full stakeholders in this matter, these creditors that it wants to give up their money. They are full stakeholders in the matter. You're asking people to sell their houses and sell their cars and give you the money. How can you do that and then try and pretend as if you are some emperor issuing orders from above? They should be working with you to see how they can help you. It's you who need help. It's not they who need help. In fact, they should be asking you for relief and things like that. You are the one asking for relief. Right. So my argument is that it's very simple. If the government doesn't do that, and then we run out of reserves, which can happen very quickly, you will begin to see the full economic crisis that I'm talking about. Ask those who saw the early 1980s. And they'll tell you that we are not there, we are not in 1983 yet. So my argument is don't take it to 1983. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, thank you very much. And this very final one before I take my break and then come back to my guest, the other guest. The Attorney General's advice, he's received a lot of plaudits locally, including from many lawyers, where the government was looking to use a law to compel us or use a presidential edict to compel us to do this process. And he looked them in the face and said, you can't do that. This is contract with the people. You must do it voluntarily. They must voluntarily, sign up. Did I hear you suggest that they didn't really look at the issue and there is the need for some legislation?
Well, the government's attempt was try and legitimize expropriation, take people's money by law. And the Attorney General said our constitution and our laws don't allow those things to happen. I'm saying that, first of all, the government has the wrong question. You can't simply go to court and try and get a court to get you to get and take people's houses and cars. So it's the same thing. But I'm saying that in our circumstances, what you need from law is certainty and clarity. So what the government and the Attorney General should have been working on is exactly what they did in Greece, in Barbados, and elsewhere. Of course, in Greece it was abused. But in Barbados, it was not abused. In Belize, it was not abused. In many other places where they've had to pass these laws, they've not used them to expropriate people's assets. What they've used those laws to do, though, is to give people absolute certainty of what happens when the government is doing an orderly resolution of its affairs in circumstances where the government is effectively bankrupt. And I'm saying that just as we push that corporate bankruptcy laws are important, how can we make the case that sovereign bankruptcy laws are irrelevant? So what the Attorney General should have advised is that, yes, go to Parliament and craft a set of laws, but that law cannot be used to expropriate people's assets without compensation because our constitution will not allow that. They are very different piece of advice. Okay. The way that it went about only talking about expropriation without talking about the certainty and clarity that bankruptcy laws provide, whether in corporate settings or sovereign settings, I think is where it falls short.
Thank you so very much, Bright Simmons. Bright Simmons is Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa. That think tank that some time ago, Gabia Chiridako told us that we would rather prefer the experience and expertise of Kenoforiata and the rest of them with their market bond issues expertise of 100 years cumulatively rather than listen to them. Thank you very much. We continue to listen to you on Newsfile, and Ghanaians are indebted to you for continuing to sacrifice your time to help them understand the issues. Right.
To joy for research with a wider audience.
Thank you very much. Right, so we take a break. When we return, I'll engage my other guest. Senor Jose is right here in the studio. And I must say that a few questions have already come up, including among which is, where is a government person or somebody from the finance ministry? My production informs me that from yesterday, they informed me that they had tried to get government representation on the discussion, but they were giving a party communicator and they declined respectfully. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. And St. Thomas Eye Hospital, providing excellence in eye care. So we are talking about your bond situation, but more importantly, an economic situation. Broke creditor, broke debtor in a broke economy. And we're looking at how to manage the obligatory voluntary debt exchange. It's said to be voluntary, but is it really voluntary? Now, let me bring on my other guest, and as you know, Senor Jose is convener, Individual Bondholders Forum. Eliklimi Komla Adbloyo is Associate Professor, Department of Finance, University of Ghana Business School. Dr. Edu Entry is convener, Pensioner Bondholders Forum, and former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabeson is Chief Executive Officer, Ghana Insurers Association. Now, I'll go to the Associate Professor. Eliklim, thank you very much for making time to join us. And I took the trouble in the course of this week. I've tried to read some scholarly work on, debt exchange issues, voluntary sovereign debt exchange matters. And I've read some rather very interesting, scholarly work that give a very grim situation of the process and after the process. This country will not be the same after this process, will it be?
Well, it does. Thank you for the question once again. So it does depend on how the process is actually handled. If it is handled very well, we could actually come out of this and the country will be in very good shape. So if you look at the Jamaican example, initially bondholders experienced an NPV loss of between 10 to 15%. Okay, so they lost some money, but before the program was over, in a few years, they had recovered their investment and actually made gains. And that improved their capital position and improved their balance sheet position. So it depends on how the program is managed. If there's a lot of consultation, if the balance sheet needs of economic agents like banks are taken into consideration, pension funds are taken into consideration, then we can actually come out very well out of this program. When you say in a few years, what do you mean? In the debt exchange program, we are looking at, the new bonds that are going to take to 2027, 2033 to mature. 33. To mature. 38 rather, to mature. Yes. And we have heard people who say, I won't live up to that time, and I have programmed my life on the interest that I get from the money I have put here. So basically what you are doing is you are snuffing life out of myself and perhaps several other dependents. So when you say few years or within a short time, what do you mean? Okay, so the program as it is, I think, is not well designed. So if you look at the NPV losses that investors are likely to suffer, on the average, it's about 77%. That's a huge loss. Okay, in Jamaica, it was 10 to 15%. Again, in terms of the maturity, okay, in Jamaica, they did the maturity extension from about 4 years to about 8 years. Here, we are extending the average maturity from about 2027 to 2038. So that's a 10-year extension. Again, in terms of the interest rate being offered, it is very low. Okay, so the average coupons on the bonds that are being restructured is about 90% thereabouts. But when we computed the yield to maturity on the new bonds, they're actually offering about 7.7%. Okay, so there's a huge reduction in the interest rates that are being offered to investors. This year was supposed to be zero interest. Now we understand it to be 2% interest, correct?
I misunderstand. Educate me.
Okay, so from the new terms that I have seen is 0% in 2023, then I think we have 5% in 2024, and then from 2025 you have the coupon rates increasing from I think about 9% to 10.6% in 2038. So those are the cash flow structures that have been offered on the bonds based on the 24th December deal the government proposed to investors.
Okay, let me hear from the insurers. I'll return to you as we look at the global picture, not limit our view to what is feared to be suffered by Ghana and Ghanaians locally. So, Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabason, forgive me if I get your last name wrong, Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Insurers Association. It did appear that you were getting some reprieve. Where are you now, and what are your feelings really about the process going forward?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you to all your listeners and viewers. Let me say that the issue of insurance is very straightforward. We take some amount of money called premiums, and then we turn it around, we bear risk, and then pay sums assured. Now, sums assured are always higher than the amount of money that we took in the form of premiums. And just like any financial system, there are assumptions underpinning sale. So typically, we find ourselves in a situation where, for example, if you say that you are going to give somebody pay claims of, let's say, 100 million in 2 years, you might not have the money with you now. Perhaps you might have 70 million, and you have projected that in 2 years, based on the fact that you have done some investments, you will be able to get 100 million in 2 years. Now, currently, with the structures that we are talking about, the liquidity, in terms of what assumptions we made, is likely to be problematic, in the sense that if I had 70 million and I'm looking forward to another 30 million to add so that I can pay the claims, and now it's been reduced to, let's say, between 5 and 7 million Ghana cedis within the 2 years. Obviously, there is a deficit of about 23 million cedis. I've simplified it for the understanding of all of us, and that is a challenge. So we raise the issues in the sense that because we are a highly regulated environment, there are certain things that we are obliged to do. As we speak now, we have our 4.3 billion cedis of our money in domestic bonds. And it is the case that because there's a regulatory requirement that we have to invest so much in government of Ghana securities, including bonds, we had to do that. Now, so the issue is, what do we do under this circumstance? We raise our concerns. In fact, we raise our concerns to the Minister of Finance on the 13th of October, before even the issue of bond exchange, or whichever form that we're talking about, was announced. And then we've also had 2 meetings. Now, I rest on the last meeting's outcome. And the minister wrote to say that, looking at the circumstances, it will be very difficult for the ministry to exempt us. But what they intend to do is that they are letting the regulator give us what we call the forbearances in terms of the issues of solvency and others. And then we are also looking forward to having what we call the liquidity support fund, or whichever name we give it, as well as the one that helps us in stability, the stabilization fund. Challenge is that these are ideas that have been mooted. We are not very clear. We don't know the terms and conditions that will come, and to what extent it will be able to address our problem. Please let me put it in context that we are talking an industry where on average you pay 4 to 5 million cedis in terms of claims to our policyholders daily, and yearly is about 2 billion or thereabout. Now, and we have over 7.4 million in terms of policyholders. These are lives that we're talking about here. And we have liabilities of about 5.9 billion. If you put all of these together, we are looking forward to certainty in terms of what it is that we will get to be able to do what we are doing already. The challenge is that the terms and conditions are not very clear. And so we wrote to the Honorable Minister and on the 13th of January. And so we asked for two basic reliefs. One, we asked for extension so that we'll be able to understand the nitty-gritties and how we'll be able to manage the risk that we as professionals are supposed to do in the first place. And then secondly, on specifics of some of the things that he has to do. And under the background that we have to engage our regulator in terms of the forbearances and so on and so forth. So we are yet to receive a reply on that particular letter, and so we look forward to that, taking into consideration the factors that I've raised. Thank you.
Interesting. I'll get back to you. Let me bring on Dr. Edu, NP convener, Pensioner Bondholders Forum, and former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you once again for your time. As far as the group that you represent, is concerned, is there any lights at the end of the tunnel for you, or you put on the table completely just take your hands off, like Senor would say, let my people go, period?
Well, thank you very much. We haven't had any responses from the minister yet, but we believe given the extended period, we believe he has still some room enough time for him to come out with a statement.
How long has it been that you have been expecting? How long has it been that you have been expecting some communication? You have less than 2 weeks to the deadline.
Well, since we submitted this petition on the 10th, so we have been expecting a response from the 10th, and then on the 11th we sent a letter to the minister to have time for us to meet him. We didn't have that. When we had our second press conference last Monday, after the press conference, we went to the office again, wanting to meet with the minister. He was engaged in a lengthy meeting. So we sat for about an hour and some time and left the place. So we are still hoping that we will get some information from him within a matter of days before.
Where's the assurance coming from? Because 10 days on, and you have not had the courtesy of any official acknowledgement of what you are seeking to do. So where's the hope that you have coming from?
Well, when you listen to the minister recently talking about a society that doesn't take care of the elderly, is not a society worthy of living in, and some kind of statement like that, then I believe he's seriously taking our concerns into consideration. So that gives me a hope that he would come out soon with a statement that pensioners have been exempted, just as would-be pensioners have been exempted from the program.
So chiefly, what are your concerns and what is the solution that you are proposing?
Well, we have said, as I always say, that there is no difference between maize and kinky. Our elders would say, our basis is that once you have exempted people who are yet to come on pension, you don't want them to come and suffer. And so you say the amount of money that is available to them to come on pension, you don't want to impair it. Simply then don't impair also the amount of money that are in the hands of pensioners and they have invested in your bonds. So ours is just, I always say, I believe maybe it was an oversight because you can't handle people who are yet to come on pension. You can't think of them more than people who are on pensions now. If you don't want people to come on pensions and suffer, why would you like people who are now on pensions suffer? It doesn't make sense to me. So I believe it was an oversight that was just drawing the attention of government that perhaps you didn't take care of that as an oversight. So quickly go back and do that. So if the pensioner people who are yet to come on pension,
how many people or families are involved here, and what will be the consequence if you don't get a positive response?
Well, for families that are in, I can't have the figures. I can only, and even those people that have been able to reach since I started this program, which is we're now about 450, getting to about 150 pensioners. You can't reach all pensioners in this country, not even all pensioners in Accra, let alone in other regions. All pensioners in Accra, in the country is difficult to reach. But I try as much as possible to get some pensioners around so that the decision making will not be like only myself is taking the decision, but at least
400 is representative enough. What are the potential consequences if you don't get a positive hearing?
If we don't get, in fact, even as at now that we are talking, people are losing their lives because of the uncertainty. Pensioner who is on the have to go on to dialysis, stroke, medical, what do you call it, high blood pressure, diabetes, expecting that the money will be coming for him or her to buy and go through this.
We are losing our guest on the line there, but he's been trying to sort of help us to appreciate the situation. If
it went off.
Yes, yeah. yes, Doc. Thank you.
I was saying,
thank you. You are
people
on.
are expecting these monies that is coming from their coupon to do all these things that they are supposed to do. That many people, that is the only source of income for them. And you see, when you are growing, if you haven't grown before, you will really understand. I know that's nature. But if you have grown, some of us have diseases that we, now if you are at your age, you don't go for prostate this, cancer that. When you are growing, all these things are coming. And nobody is taking care of you. In some advanced countries, I know for UK, even medical supply is supplied to retirees free. Even their bills, the tariff that they bill them for electricity is lower than the normal tariffs. They are helped to pay for their gas and others. They are giving bus passes, free bus passes to board buses if they are traveling. Same thing is happening in Canada, elsewhere. They are taken care of.
All right.
We do not have that for people who are retirees. And they are small income.
But Dr. Edward Anyenini, the circumstance we find ourselves in now is that sacrifices have to be made. There are, the last time we checked, you have over 200 and I think 27,000 pensioners on the SNIT roll. Like they say, kitwe biensa. What are you ready to, give, or nothing at all?
No, we have given what we have to give. As Paul said, we have finished the fight. We have fought. People have worked. I started working in 1975. until 2016. I have worked for this country for about 42 years. We have done our bit. We are finished. We no longer have anything to offer this country in terms of this burden sharing. The youth are there. Our children are there. Our nephews are there. All our grandsons and granddaughters are there. It is their time for them to hold on and fight, not we, the elderly ones. When Russia was going to war, did you hear them bringing the retirees to go and fight? It was a national assignment. But you know, they don't have the strength. They are a vulnerable group. They are not the ones who fight this fight. They have fought their fight. They have finished their race. Now they are just resting and waiting that the Lord will give them some time, leave, and depart from this earth. So you are not going to rely on us to solve this problem. Rely on the people who have the muscles, who have the strength to if your car gets stuck in the mud, do you go and call an old man to come and help you pull your car out? No. Even in our villages, when you get to a certain age, even in Sawa, you know in Sawa, when there is a funeral, there's everybody contributes. In my village, it is only 1 cedi. Even that 1 cedi, we have exempted those who are elderly from paying that 1 cedi. That is the wisdom in our customs and tradition. We must use the same thing in our governance. Please, these people cannot be the ones to help. If they were not there to have worked for this country, maybe the youth wouldn't have come to meet this country. So they must recognize that they have done their bit.
All right.
They have done their bit. They can no longer be the ones that should share this or bear these problems.
Right. Doc, thank you very much. And I may have a smile on my face, but it's serious.
It is.
Now, to have someone of his age, he started work when you were not born. When you were not born, you know, I may have been a fetus. Now, can you help them in any way in their mobilization? You started within 1 week and you were hitting, you know, how much in the numbers? They are over 227,000 or so on the road by the figures, I think 2021. So 400, they could get more people within the fold.
Well, I don't think my uncle, Dr. Anyenini, really needs to mobilize any more people in his particular group. He represents a constituency, and that's the constituency you should look at. I don't think it's fair to want to just look at his numbers today. It's difficult. A lot of these pensioners are not necessarily tech savvy.
What has worked for you guys has been the social media.
It's been technology. And our website keeps crashing. It's crashed again. I think we hit over 300,000. It crashed, so we have to come back to rebuild it again because we didn't expect this amount of mobilization. But it's been very, very helpful. But the only thing I encourage him, we are a collective. While I agree that the pensioners have a special place, and they have actually served. Equally, is it the case that can be made that if they had served effectively, we shouldn't also be here because they are the ones who have carried us this way. And if you go to a typical place, the rich people are the oldest people. So you see the younger ones don't really have these problems. I don't think there's any special difference between everybody. Everybody has very unique social challenges. So we must fight together and win for everybody together. So at the IBF, we do not just represent young people. We represent both pensioners and non-pensioners, self-employed, unemployed, formal, informal. Everybody is a part of the IBF. As part of our conveners, you also have a pensioner, who is also one of our conveners. If you look at on the scale
that may be a pensioner who has put his pension money in some security.
But that's exactly what Edward Anyenini's group is representing. They're not representing the pension funds.
That's right.
So the pension funds he's not talking about the pension money they get.
That's correct.
That's correct. As a pensioner, I also am an individual, and I also made my own personal investment.
That's right.
Don't interfere with it. I agree with him. I don't disagree with him. So I think we are fully aligned, and that's also what we also stand for. So any support we we can give them, we will give them. But I think we should look at it more as a collective going forward. The problem that we sometimes miss in this entire thing, Bright was really right when he said that we currently maybe have a fiscal crisis. We're not yet, but we are going to get there. And this decision to actually try and involve individuals is what may facilitate or fast track it. So I think that there's been some little gap in the policy evaluation. Maybe it was just, that's why I keep saying that, look, it's easy to sit behind a PC as a modeler, put in numbers and then shift it here and there. But these are not just numbers. They are lives, and you must, at every point in time, look at the social reaction, the behavioral reaction to everything you do. So I'll walk you through the economics part of it. In every given economy, the providers of loanable funds are households. The funding, domestic funding that drives the whole economy is mainly savings from households. So when you see a bank take your money and go and put it in government security, it's because households put there. Firms are actually takers because they now take credit. So the last place you touch, when you disrupt that particular base and their confidence in the financial sector, you disrupt the economy's access to loanable funds. Then you also disrupt the economy's access to capital. You are destroying the economy. You will have an economic crisis. If today everybody gets scared of putting his money in the bank and we are going to have a run on the banks will crash. If we all now say we are going to keep our money in our homes, keep it in dollars, keep it in safes, the financial system will crash. The government will crash. So the last place you want to deal with is a place like that. And even if you have to deal with it, your communication must be well coordinated, must be engaging over time. Now you're looking at people losing up to about 88%. In some cases, 77%, as Eli indicated. He's also chairman of the Tesla Capital Research team, which I'm a part of. It's so true. Who is going to give up that? Look at Jamaica. It was what, 10 and 15%, right? Look how long it took them for them to even come to a consensus. How do you expect people to just jump at an 88% head cut or body cut? I don't know what kind of cut that you are looking at. There's a lot of engagement required. But the most sensitive part is this particular part. Because the individuals don't have any backup. They don't have any support system. They have no incentives. The other thing you should also look at is that this is actually property, it's assets. People have homes. When the money was collected, the loans were taken. We may have challenges with how government used it. I think I walked through that with Evans Mensah. The government was not optimal in the utilization of the debt, the net borrowings accrued. But whatever it is, it was used within the entire economic space for everybody. You can say people, there was corruption, that's fine. You said that, hey, the part that we are all responsible for came to everybody. Samson, you may have kept your money rather in the bank and invested in government bonds. He may have just decided that he would rather keep his money and go and invest in property. But at the end of the day, we have a problem to solve together. Why should it be you who went to put your money in the bonds be the one to suffer and not the one who put his money in the property? There's an equity problem there. Another thing we also sometimes miss, you take a balance sheet and you go and maybe look at Uncle Nani's thing. Uncle Nani, okay, maybe has 2 million, 3 million. Oh, he's really fine. I don't think that this should be a problem. After all, I'm sending him his monthly pensions. On that money that he's taking, he has a lot of family members that are depending on it. He has nephews he has to take care of. His people are graduating without jobs. You have to sustain them. And that's why I say the human being going called a Ghanaian is an overcutted human being. Your taxes have gone up, they are cutting you. Inflation has reduced the value of money, it has cut you. Your social interdependence is cutting you. So the human being left, what is left as an individual? And on top of this human being you are dealing with, you now say that the little he has saved over the years and try to set it aside to really make meaning for his life. That one too, you want to come and chop 88% of its value overnight. It's not a sustainable proposition. But I think that the Ministry of Finance has opened up engagement. And we must commend the minister for it.
How do you explain before you get to that, how do you explain the 88% value of your money or investment that is lost? The finance minister at the very start said nothing is lost. Nothing will be lost, quoting the scriptures. That is what we should be working with.
No, it can't be what is working with, because the finance minister is not the one who defined science. He didn't define finance. He didn't define maths. He didn't define truth. So what is real is real. It's not. I don't need to make it up. You heard the numbers from early, because there's a model you use. You look at the present value of your money. So the last time I was here, I really showed you. Now, if people over this same period were even going to expect the same coupons that, or the interest rate that we're expecting, that was 50% of the value gone. If we are going to now look at the next option, which will actually be what we call opportunity cost in economics, if I wasn't investing in bonds at this time, what similar thing could I have invested in? That would have been treasury bills. Treasury bills at those rates, it means that you're going to lose about 72% of the value. Now, if you look at inflation, which should be actually the minimum that should really give you a neutral return, meaning you don't make any real return on your money, then that's where you get to the 88%. So it's not the case that nothing will be missing. My brother, let's make life very simple. What was the price of cement last year or 10 years ago? Just think about it. I built a house. I was building maybe then. I guess cement must have been 20 cedis or less. Maybe 60, I've forgotten. Anybody who can find it, please tell us. 10 years in 2012, how much was a bag of cement? All right. So if a bag of cement was, say, 12 cedis, then, or let's say 20 Ghana cedis, that 20 Ghana cedis, if I decide to pay it to you in 2023, tell me whether you'll be able to get a bag of cement. You even get half a bag. You even get a quarter of a bag. So it means that you are holding 20, but the value of the 20 is not the value that it was before. So you are losing money. So it is not the case that nothing will be lost. And that's why in our petition, we were quite clear that we tried to recouch what the finance minister said, that we don't think he believed. He wanted to see that so much will be missing, so much will be lost and all that. It is not the case that you are not losing. You are going to lose money. The question is the extent of loss. Can we accommodate it? Should it be a burden share thing at a certain level? The banks and the insurance companies, I heard them, and there has to be clarity on the structures to support them. Government has the ability to provide them certain perks, forbearances. It helps them recover. Because when the economy is down, they will also not be up there. They won't have any sustainable business. In any case, we are all here anyway. So let's find a way to move out of here. I've not heard the bank say they are unwilling to cooperate. They are expecting that the burden should be properly shared, both from government and the structure that makes them also sustainable. So there's a win, there's a way to win. The insurance also have this, insurance bodies also have the same thing. They need to be able to pay their claims when they are due.
That's right.
Because if you are, I'm expecting to collect maybe 100 million cedis. He gave us a number that they're spending about 2 billion or something like that, 5 million a day, multiply it by 365 or whichever. Then that's the money supposed to come. They are supposed to have some bonds retire or mature this year, and that's what we use to pay it. Then suddenly, you are saying that this money you can't get it. The best chance for you to get a piece of it is even 14% of it or 15% of it in 2027. So if the claim is made today, how are they going to pay the claim? Government may be able to come and say, okay, let's set up this stability fund or this liquidity fund or financial stability fund. Anytime you have these major claims, this is the structure we'll put in place for you to be able to make a claim on it. Right. And we'll cushion you at a very minimal interest rate or close to zero interest rate so that the system doesn't collapse. For them, there's a mechanism. But for an individual, when myself or any pensioner or you have programs, your children have to go to school, you've been saving all this while so that at least you can afford your child an Ashanti University, a Legon University, a University of Ghana education. And it gets to this time, they are telling you that you are spreading over 10 years. What happens? What if you just quit your job because you're expecting that you build this capital to start a business for you to survive? So you also now become effectively a pensioner.
There's this man who spoke to
without pension.
Who spoke to Top Story yesterday, and I've seen some of the bank statements that he had to show as proof. And he had put his money in the cocoa bill.
Yeah.
And the expectation was that he'll pick it at this particular time.
Yeah.
To pay his wife's school fees.
Yeah.
And the money drops in and he's been taken without his consent. So now he's stranded. He's just confused. He doesn't know what to do. That means potentially that education is going to be put on hold.
That's what it means. All right, that potential, that education is put on hold, and may also have economic implications for their survival actually today.
That's right.
All right, there's one thing that you said, and I just want to make the public understand. Cocoa bills are not amongst the safest papers you have in the country. Anybody who tells you that has misinformed you.
Oh, really?
It is not. It's not a paper issued by the government of Ghana. It's a corporate bond or corporate bill. It is issued by a corporate. So you have to look at the financial health of that corporate. This is a company that has been consistently making operational losses over the past few years. Consistently. If you follow and you're watching their books, it's one of the places you even want to put your money. All right, but the problem is that the education and visibility is not there. When you go to the Cocoa Board website today, I think the latest the financial statement you find is 2019. That tells you the level of transparency of this organization you are trying to trust. Even the government of Ghana, at the end of every year, by the budget time, gives us an indication of how it is ending this year. This is a corporate. As we speak, we are in 2022. We don't know what has happened in 2020, what has happened in 2021, what has happened in 2022, and then now we are going to start. We have started.
So hold on for me.
So it is not the
I'll
case.
return on the big issue of the burden sharing, and where you people say that you don't actually need the individual bondholders' funds for what you need in the circumstances. So return for you to explain that to us, and where you continue to ask that there's a lot that government can cut. It can look at various other places to cut on, which it is not doing. The finance minister gives us an indication that there has been some 2 to 3 GDP reduction in expenditure. And, they are only paying, on commitment basis. And the government, the fuel issues that they are seeking to take care of, using your small vehicles rather than your V8s that consume, so much. They are going to. They are also doing that. So that is also some part of thing that they are doing to help. But let me get to Professor Eliklim again, and I wanted you to share with us from where you left off on the question I asked you. I'm sure you know David Ofosu-Dote. He has been speaking at the Constitution Day lectures and at other places now, and he is scared, and I believe like many others, that the economy definitely will not be the same. He refers us to many situations where people are now losing faith and trust in the financial systems, like Senor, suggested earlier. We heard of the DKMs. We heard of the men's gold issues. Then the bank collapse matter came up. Well, we spent 25 billion to clean up the banks. Now we are looking for 3 billion from the IMF. We can't get. I don't know how that works though. These have affected, the culture of savings and investment generally. And now, where people felt it was safest to put your money, of course, we understand that treasury bills would not be affected. Can you imagine the economy after, in the process to recovery and after recovery?
Okay,
that people have lost trust in the financial systems, even including the safest place to put your money?
Yes. So yes, thank you very much. So it's a bit unfortunate that this is happening at this time because, as you rightly mentioned, people lost money during the banking crisis. People lost money when they invested in men's gold, which was a scam or a Ponzi scheme, if you ask me. Okay. When I teach investments, I always tell my students that government instruments are more or less risk-free. And I used to mention examples of countries like Argentina defaulting, Russia defaulting. I didn't know it would be coming close to home very soon. Okay, so it's an unfortunate situation. A lot of institutions who had, and I know a number of institutions who had invested money in even some of the banks and savings and loans who lost their money. they learned their lessons and decided to invest their money in government instruments with the knowledge that these instruments were more or less risk-free. Okay, so it's unfortunate. I think that, like Senor has said, individual investors should be exempted. They are very vulnerable. Okay, they don't have a lot of safety nets. So if you're able to exempt individuals, that creates room for them to keep supplying funds to the financial sector so that banks can continue to lend, government can obtain funds to carry out its activities, etc. So it's unfortunate, but we can mitigate the consequences by, for example, one, excluding individual investors. Two, if the situation of the banks are well dealt with, such that they don't make too much losses. So from a Bloomberg report that I saw, banks this year are not going to make any profits if they accept the domestic debt exchange program. So that is serious. Again, in its current form, their capital is likely to be impaired. And that means that the ability to lend will reduce. That will compromise future economic growth. They may have liquidity challenges, etc. Okay, so if we're able to design a better package for the banks such that the financial system can keep running, okay, then in that case, we can come out from this crisis and recover. Financial crises are not unusual, okay, or economic crises.
There will be job losses. How bad will it be?
That will be difficult to tell. If the banks take the deal in its current form, for example, it means that they may have to lay off their staff. So that's direct job losses from the financial sector.
The banks are looking at 65 billion impact on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were saying 50% of what?
50% of the workforce, because look, your top line, about 50% is gone.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. It's just as simple as that. Zero, what do you call it, income from government securities. You're out, you know.
Yeah, so Doctor, continue, because I was exploring further with you, you know, bringing people to think about the reality now, so that people don't live in an illusion that, you know, this is, you know, some painkiller, like we say, you take it now and then the next day you are healed.
Right. Yeah. So yes, the direct losses for the banks is there. But there will also be direct losses for businesses that banks, for example, lend to. And remember that banks in Ghana, a large proportion of their portfolio is invested in government instruments. So if they can't generate income from these instruments, they can't pay their employees, they will have to do massive layoffs. The businesses that they are not able to lend to, these businesses may also have to lay off their employees. So the impact can be there. But if we manage it well by ensuring that the banks have sufficient liquidity to continue to operate, that the banks are not eroded in terms of their capital, so that they can keep lending to the economy. And also by communicating and engaging investors. I think the process has started. Like Senor mentioned, the Ministry of Finance is now meeting the Individual Bondholders Forum. So if we are able to engage, then we can find solutions together. Indeed, I don't think that the financial institutions want to outrightly reject the proposal. But if they are engaged and their balance sheet needs are taken into consideration, such that like the insurance companies can keep paying their claims, the banks can also keep paying their obligations and liabilities, then we can reduce or mitigate the impact. But if we are not able to manage the process very well, that could compromise the financial sector, compromise economic growth, lead to mass unemployment, that can lead to political upheavals like we saw in Sri Lanka. So those are some of the consequences that can occur if we don't manage it well.
Okay, when we return, like I mentioned to Senor, would look at the other issues. And the minister repeats that nobody's principal is at risk. Those are his words. Nobody's principal is at risk. What does that mean, and do you trust that? When it comes to austerity and people say government is not doing much, they want to see government also burden share. The minister says that expenditure is being cut to the bone. Do you appreciate what he's talking about? That expenditure has been cut to the bone. These are his own words. He says expenditures are being cut to the bone, at least in the ministries. Okay, so we'll be right back.
And how we then manage our ministries to make sure that there's no excessive expenditure.
Again, it comes back to some people trying to quantify these measures that you're already taking in the budget. And they see that it is still not enough, and maybe looking at the challenge that we are in, a lot can be done. The issues about ministers being moved around is the prerogative of the president, but when it comes to the expenditure of the ministries, agencies, so I would say the ball is in your court. There can be further squeeze as well to demonstrate our commitment and to share the burden, because then some are saying that the alternative to this debt exchange program, a partial one, is also government taking some cuts as well.
It's true. I mean, George, if you look at, I think we have a 2 to 3% GDP reduction in expenditure, if you look at that. And then, as I mentioned, expenditures are going to be based on commitment basis. So don't go ahead of yourself and, you know, transact certain expenditures. That will not even get through the give-me system. Because if your budget is not there, you can then post request for that. So that we've now been able to integrate the HRMIS of give-miss, and that will help forestall ministers or officers, you know, giving contracts that really the budget can support, so that we get into these arrears and liabilities. And that's important, and we are going to insist on those things. So really, on our part, as a ministry, and the oversight that we are now putting in place, the type of letters that are already gone out, I think we're going to see a very, very different year for our management of fiscal rectitude.
I get the austerity that is being championed, but some will look at your budget deficits as well and ask that they don't get that sense of austerity in government, because if you're going to spend more, about 60 or 61 billion, I stand to be corrected, that sense of austerity is not being led by the government. Maybe the Ministry of Finance is doing it, but the government as an entity, the government as a company, I'm not feeling that.
I mean, if you look at all of the MMDAs and the programs that we need to support, they're real livelihoods at the end of the day. This whole outcry that we hear from bondholders, it's because it's partly the issue of whether people are getting appropriate, decent wages and salaries for what they do. And even though I would admit it's not decent, the quantum in the end ends up being quite significant for a percentage of revenue that we have. And that becomes an issue. So how much more can you cut? I mean, if you were to talk to any ministry, I mean, they will be tell you that they are bored at the goods and services that we have allocated to them this year as opposed to the previous year. And all of those things, you know, have seen quite a bit of cut. I'm expecting that with the exchange program, we'll hopefully then be able to reduce the expenditures in our interest charges, and that would really bring our deficit to controllable limits, because we need to still move towards the under 5% in the FRA.
Can we cut more?
Can we cut more? We will certainly look during the year to be able to adjust, you know, as we get the benefits of the debt program and see. But you can't have government come into a halt, okay? That's important. Work must go on. And you can't do an austerity program and not be conscious of social protection that we have to do, but that has to be done efficiently. But certainly we have a team that is going to continue to be vigilant about what MMD is spent.
Is there an alternative to this debt exchange program?
What do we have? Essentially, if we look at, you know, globally, you can't have a situation where you are paying 20-25% interest. on government issuance and believe that you can, make progress with your macros. So we have to do something with the debt program. First, we have our fiscal adjustments, macro plans, structural changes. You then need a debt program to really get you off this 102% or 5% down to 55 over this landing zone of 2028. We have to get there to reduce that debt.
I felt very bad, and I said, we are dead because an individual, someone who has some money and also cater for people who are disabled. I have 3 disabled people with their mother who is also a disabled that I'm taking care of them at Butumbura. Their father died and we have to acquire we have to sell a property. And quickly when we sold this property, I think that the best place that I can put it is in savings or a government bond, so that anytime they are looking for it, I can take the interest and then give it to them. One of them, a disabled person, is going to school at Legon. I send him her there. Another person is also trying to do DJ, and I also take care of him, plus their mother, who also cannot work. So these monies are supposed to be used in taking care of them, including my own money for my children who are also in their universities. So I didn't know how come we individual bondholders has to be included, because if we are included, it means that our livelihood is cut off completely. Apparently, this bond is supposed to mature this very month, this very year.
Okay.
To be able,
the bond that you bought,
to be mature this very year, to enable me use the proceeds to do all this to help them continue their living. And here comes the government telling us that it's not going to give it to us in 2, 3 years, 5 years, 15 years. It means that they will have to just die. They have to die because they would not survive.
Wow. How much did you invest?
I have 50,000. They also have, I have 500,000. They also have 500,000.
Wow. So 1 million cedis locked up in the bond.
Yes. Yeah, so Mr. President Anado, please consider individuals, because individuals are, God's creation. And that is the reason why you are even doing this, what do we call them? The church.
National Cathedral.
The National Cathedral, where if you build cathedral to look after human being and make sure that human beings are well survived and serve God, and you have that spirit, then you don't have to let any human body suffer or perish. Don't let to have any individual.
Right, you're welcome back. This is Newsfile, and if we tell you the stories of the individuals, human faces that speak to us about their circumstances because of what is coming at them, you will be shocked. And you will look at some of our leaders and ask if they really appreciate what is going on, in this country, and the manner in which some of them are talking around town. Atiapa says, my EDC principle has been affected. Let no one lie to you. When I enrolled on EDC, I didn't sign up for what I see now. My Providence Fund is equally affected. Well, Senior and his team will be explaining, and they have been explaining what it means that every somewhere, somehow, everybody else is affected somehow. Peter Doe says, we know we are in a very serious economic crisis as a country, but what most Ghanaians didn't know now is that our financial sector situation is very slippery and a looming disaster. All deposits, people's investments, including individual bondholders, and the finance minister tells us that if we don't cooperate in this process, the country is heading into jeopardy. These are his own words in that his exclusive interview with George Wiafe. K. Amofa says, the more I understand Ghana's domestic debt exchange, the more I think we need to have a new manager at the Ministry of Finance, Ghana. Manfrey says, my wife has been looking for a job since 2016 without success. She goes to Data Bank to withdraw her investment and is told all the interest is gone and her principal has also been reduced. This domestic bond exchange is wicked. Vel Cannon says, commending Ghana's finance minister is like praising a bus driver for telling you to get out and push the bus out of a gutter that he rode into whilst he remains in the driver's seat with the air conditioner still running. That's for you, Senor Jose. Aaron Coban, he didn't finish what he was saying, so let's hear him in full before we can criticize him that he's unduly and unnecessarily praising the finance minister. Aaron Coban says, we have a leadership crisis. If the people don't call for stringent laws to protect our purse, we will have some people lead us into an abyss. Saidu Muhammad says, my fear is that people will start to withdraw their monies. That's if you get it. And I'm part of them because I don't trust the financial sector. Suta Davis says, which expenditure cut was the finance minister talking about? Has government reduced the number of ministers, number of CEOs, the useless staffers wasting our money in Jubilee House? This man is just as wicked as the word. It's difficult when people get into politics and they face certain difficulties. My encounter with Ken Ofori-Atta in a different situation. He's not the devil that many see him to be today, you know, but what can you do? If you have him making promises that he's reneging on, he's breaking them left, right, center, how can you fault people when they say that? So now let's get back to, I've got a few more messages, but I'll share them shortly. When I go to Prof, I'll be asking about alternative, because the finance minister suggests that there's no alternative. This is the way to go. But my question to you was that you were saying that the individual bondholders, you don't need their money to prop up the economy.
It's not that we don't need their money to prop up the economy. Individual bondholders, and let me define our constituency well. We're looking at people who have holdings directly on the CSD, and also those who have invested.
What's CSD?
The Central Securities Depository. So when you buy a treasury bill yourself, you have a CSD. If you buy a bond yourself through your bank, you have one. So the account doesn't sit with the bank, it sits with the Central Securities Depository. And that's run by the Bank of Ghana. It's a subsidiary sort of it. Then you have collective investment schemes. So you have individuals who invest in collective investment schemes that also uninvest on our bond market. So you go to a fund manager like Tessa Capital, the Triple T is supposed to be a risk-free fund, for example. Then you have the fixed income from Stanlib, you have EDC, Data Bank M Fund, EPAC. All those are collective investment schemes. But you have individuals who invest in it. Then these fund managers take it and invest on the bond market. The money doesn't belong to the fund managers. So if you negotiate with them and something happens, they don't lose. The only person really losing are the individuals who put their money there. So these are the people we talk about when we talk about individuals. Samson, this is not that we don't want to give. Who is paying the taxes? Are they not the same individuals? With increased taxes, we are paying for it. We have not refused to. We are providing loanable funds to the economy so that the economy's wheels can run. Are they not the individuals? The treasury bills that is giving government lifeline today, same individuals. So
but of course, the minister said treasury bills will, his words,
I'm saying that,
never be touched.
I'm referring to your submission,
right?
Saying that to prop up the economy. I'm trying to say that we are already doing everything we can to prop up the economy. We haven't gone on any aluta against an increment of our PAYE, against the addition of taxes on VAT. We are cooperating. We need to have individuals have confidence and sustain that confidence, because look, that is where the real risk is. That's where we'll quickly transition from a fiscal crisis to an absolute economic crisis. And for me, it's my biggest fear. In addition, of course, is the direct impact that you have. This is the group of people who only trusted their government. And for them, their impact, there's no cushioning as compared to all the other structures. And when you touch this one, you will destroy your economy. That one I can assure you. It's not rocket science. You just need basic economics to realize it. But on the spreadsheets, you realize that, oh yes, when I add them, maybe this will balance. Now, they don't need them. That's the question. The finance minister said, and I wish your team will put up the slides. If I think I shared some slides with you the last time. The question as to are IBs required? If you can share it with viewers, that would be great. You are asking for 80% participation. This group of people combined are just about 10%. 11% we say, but now they've even reduced it a bit for us. So let's say still 11%. So it's just 11%. So all those who are watching on the screen, that is the red pie. Government needs the green part of the pie. So when you take out that red, you still have everything else to deal with. So why disrupt the entire economy? Disrupt the sanctity of it. Disrupt 6.5 million lives unsustainably and possibly plunge that into an economic crisis. It's not a necessary feature. But you definitely need the broader economy to support government's activity. Maybe not this kind of DDE. We may have to negotiate it. There's a need for a reset in our entire paradigm, how we do things. Our tax compliance must go up. We must all start filing our taxes. We must all be willing to pay, because we can't just claim it is an MPP government today. The Ghana is one. Whether it's NDC or MPP, nobody wants to be hungry. So we have to fix it, because whatever it is, whoever caused it, we are where we are now, so we have a crisis. Government that leads must show the way. You don't show the way by increasing your expenditure by 40%. That's why I was saying I commend the finance minister for opening up for us to really have a conversation, for us to honestly look at how we fix the problem. Because from where we sit, what government was doing was trying to take the easy way out. Because it didn't want to take the hard decisions for itself. It rather wanted us to take the painful pill. And that painful pill can be counterproductive and very disruptive of the economy. You take your capital expenditure. I think that will be the next slide. You take your capital expenditure. You've increased capital expenditure to 27 billion from 15.7 billion the previous year. I mean, that'll be the previous slide. You see, it's another pie chart with a piece of, or the next slide. You've moved it by that. If you actually take out, look at it, this is what you have on the screen right now, is the budget increment, the total increment in the budget right now, which is about 54 billion. That 54 billion, if you reduce your expenditure by 6.6 billion, you still have an expansionary budget, but still you wouldn't have touched individuals. Even this 54 billion, I don't think you should be doing it. Because in the first place, when you owe and you can't sustain your payments, what you do is that you don't add more debt. What we have done is that we are running a budget deficit of 61 billion. Meaning our debt profile, what you have there, is going to go up by 61 billion. So for starters, let me put it this way, when you enter a bathroom and the bathtub is running, the place is flooding, you don't first take a pill to start taking the water out. You go and close the tap. So you know that this is the quantum of problem I have, and I have to drain the water out of the room. That's what you have to do. What we are doing right now is we are running and opening new taps by adding more debt. So that's the first step. Stop the debt. 2, and if you want to stop the debt, just say that, look, I'm going to live life just like 2022. If you live life like just like 2022, you will be cutting out 54 billion cedis in your budget. But that will mean that people's lifestyle in government will change. But all of us sitting here, when we are cash strapped, when we don't have resources and we are broke, don't we adjust our lifestyle? When you are broke, is that the time to move from beer to champagne? You don't do that. From that time, you become a vegetarian. You reduce your, forgive me, my wife is a vegetarian, so you decide to change your lifestyle. You reduce the quantum of meat. This is basic economics management. Our mothers could do it. I don't see why we can't do it. All right, and some of us didn't have mothers who were economists. They were just caterers. All right, and they could do it and manage homes. And this is a broader sphere of it. We should go to manage, but it needs government to make hard decisions. You look at the state-owned enterprise. The
minister says they are reviewing all flagship programs. You know, they are all under review. He's
all of them,
that, except that he doesn't. He avoids the word review. You know, they don't like it. So he says they are being evaluated.
That is a review. Evaluation is a review. So I mean, just semantics here, which is very necessary.
We're talking about SOEs.
SOEs are the problem. Government's debt, central government's debt itself, is 80% of GDP. 79%. So if you look at the MPC report of 2020 for November 2022, so let's round it up at 80. Now there are 10 years old. We have gone past 100, and that's where the danger is. Who brought the 100? The 100 is actually coming from the SOEs and some of government areas. Yes, and now people now get confused. Why was government saying 70 and now government is saying 100? Let's get this understanding. There's a central government public debt and then there's the general government public debt. The central government public debt are the loans that central government itself, through the Ministry of Finance, is signing or through the ministry signing with any counterparty or any lender. It doesn't even include the debt it owes, say, contractors. Those ones, we call them arrears or any vendor. Then there's the general government debt. Now, the general government debt has to do with all debts, which includes the arrears, and any state-owned enterprise debt that government has contingent liability for. And that's where the cocoa bill problem will come. That's where the bust debt will come. The ECG debt will come. The get fund debts will come. Now, when you put a lot of these state-owned enterprises, they are not self-sustaining. So when it's not self-sustaining, that's when you add it to the general government debt, and that's why we have gone up here. So if we are looking at fixing the problem, you don't look at only government, central government cutting its expenditure. Let's go and look at what is happening at the state-owned enterprises. Every one of them is bloated. Every politician wants to dump somebody there. When NPP goes, NDC comes, they want to put somebody there. We've increased our institutions from 86 to 177. Why?
You won't believe that when one of their own, Dr. Stephen Amwa, was on this show once and said that they needed to do what he called delayer the institutions, because there are some of them, there are 3 deputies unnecessary.
Absolutely.
You know, this government started with its historical bolo over 100 and over a dozen ministers, and were justifying it. My friends at City decided to just look at the communications outfit of the Jubilee House alone, and 22 individuals doing communication work. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has, from the start of this government, been talking about that place and the numbers of people that they put the hangers on, some of whom they don't have any work, just have to come and sit there.
The culture of politicians is that Ghana is a cake. Everybody's coming for a share and go. That thing must stop. Ghana is not a cake. It is a group of lives that you come, you administer, and you leave. So how you manage it, you always leave legacy that's sustainable for our own well-being. When Ghana is good, it's good for all of us. Nobody wants Ghana to go down. But when people start talking, then everything becomes politics. This country is sick. Even common sense is even now become a matter of whether it is green or it is blue. My brother, what you have in government, the size of government today doesn't make sense. Central government itself has moved what? 300,000 people in addition since 2017. What for? You have an economy which had a public sector that has been very inefficient. So if you've been inefficient, you've come, and Baumia has been touting
technology. When you bring in technology, do you increase labor? When technology is added to the space, it means you optimize the productivity of labor, meaning you actually need less labor. But we have done the reverse. We'll spend the money on the technology and we'll still now bloat the place. Now we have to deal with a compensation increment of about 10 billion, of about 6.5 billion. Now you've done this one that you have done right now. In addition, you've come to add 30%. It's important we start looking into all these 30%. If we listen to the arguments of labor, they talk about the incentives that have now been given to institutions like the Council of State, and they think that they also deserve some. Government has to cut its coat according to the size of its cloth. If you cut and match your expenditure for last year alone, you have saved 54 billion. If you're able to sustain our revenue increment over the next 3 years, it means that over the next 3 years, without government really touching even the DDE people, government has the capacity to pay off our old debts.
Okay.
It has that. But it means that it has to go through pain. You have to let go your full soldiers that you have put there doing nothing. You have to sack them. You have to cut down on some of your projects. You have to revise things like the free SHS. The free SHS, for instance, is a great project because any economy growing needs to add the skills to its labor for it to be more productive. So once you have labor and capital and savings, also a feature of your growth model, your labor can be optimized by adding technology or skills to it. So that's what Free SHS wants to do. It's just not being structured. Do we really need people to leave Accra for well-to-do homes to go to Ugehe in Cape Coast and have this budget pay for it? No. Why don't we just say the day schools is free? Maybe you get just a meal. If you want to go to boarding house, you actually have to pay for it. Unless, of course, you don't have access to a day school close by and government funds it. We easily could actually save $1 billion.
You know, the finance minister himself had a similar view at the beginning, and it does appear, he couldn't, carry the day in cabinet. So now his view appears to have changed.
There are some SOEs you should look at
and the wholesale matter.
But let me highlight one. You have close $1 billion that's going to MIF. Why are we doing MIF? They are my neighbors, very good people in there. What is it that's happening at MIF right now? Unless, of course, it was only set up to be able to facilitate a JAPA. But if not, what is it at MIF that can be done at the Minerals Commission and the Ministry of Finance at the same time? Look at it. You are putting $1 billion in there, meaning this could actually sit down and help reduce our deficit directly.
Okay, so like I said, I'll be asking Prof about what the alternatives are if he thinks there are, because there are some economics that insist that there are alternatives, but the finance minister believes there's no alternative. This is the way to go. And the earlier we all brace up and begin to support this as quickly as possible so that we can meet the 31st January deadline and assist government to be able to go to the IMF, get the board approval, begin to look towards the board approval from February, the better for all of us. But what do these people also think about the burden sharing matter? Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabison and also Dr. Edouard Nanientwi, I'll also get Elikrim's view on that before he answers that question. The finance minister actually suggests that there's a lot of cutting that is going on, that has gone on, and he says the expenditure has been cut to the bone. Somehow, it does appear the populace don't appreciate what he's saying. I don't know if you are also in the same way, you don't appreciate what he's saying. I've hosted economists on this show. From every one of them, they say cut expenditure. That's about 2 years ago. Last year, they have been saying that reduce the size of government. Professor Stephen Adai, all of them have been saying reduce the size of government. Now we hear Kwame Pianin, the rest of that. We won't contribute to this, debt exchange thing because you brought it upon yourself. You don't agree with the finance minister that they are doing something, they are cutting down? Start with Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabison.
Well, thank you. I think that the issue at stake is not a zero-sum game where one party wins and one party loses and vice versa. The bottom line is that we find ourselves in a very difficult situation. As I said earlier on, the figures I gave you was even in 2021. In 2022, we expect to pay in excess of 2.5 billion and so on and so forth. The question is, whatever strategy we use as a country, it is trite knowledge that insurance as risk bearers, we are able to manage risk, and the country needs us now more than ever, because if we are not able to carry the risk and bear the risk, we as a country would have difficulties. And therefore, whichever form of shifts, each party has a role to play in this conversation. Everybody at least knows what he or she has to do to be able to help. Now, the minister says that he wants positive response from industry for us to be able to pull ourselves out of this difficulty. We are appealing for clear information on exactly what we can do together. So as I said, we talked about the Emergency Liquidity Assistance Fund. We talked assistance. We also talked about the Financial Stability Fund and a couple of things that they stem the forbearances from the regulator. We are still engaging, and we look forward to the minister inviting us for further engagement on the issue, just so that we are very clear in our minds which areas we have to deal with to ensure that we will continue to bear the risk and manage the risk for the entire country in these difficult times. That is what we look forward to. And so even in the face of all this, I want to assure our policyholders that we are managers of risk and we are putting things together so they should be calm and think that they have to do, as policyholders, whatever discussions we have with them in terms of contracts, we will continue to engage them to ensure that they get the best of services that we have.
There's no certainty from the source that you are depending on. So how do you proceed to give that assurance? Because you don't control what is happening now.
Well, that was why I said that we work within the environment of uncertainty. Risk. So we do scenarios. We've done simulations, but a bit more information and a bit more engagement from the minister will help in the discussion. And fortunately for us, I told you we wrote a letter on the 30th of January, and among the reliefs, we said we were looking for extension. And fortunately, it was announced, even though it wasn't, we weren't reading to, but we assumed that the notice was to the world, and therefore everybody has taken notice of that. That's up to 31st January. We look forward to engagement before the 31st of January so that we will have clarity on issues that will at least give us some certainties in terms of what exactly we can do even within this difficult situation. Thank you very much.
Let's hear to Dr. Anyenini Entry. The sacrifices, the burden sharing, that's where people are also asking. Some say if you're asking for ministers and ministries to be reduced and all of that, Alan Chiramanting is starting his campaign. He says he's going to do something like that. People are asking, how much will that give the state anyway? So why should we bother? And it appears that's the president's thinking. And so even his own people are talking, but he's just not listening to them.
Well, I think people have commented on that already, that if there is a room for cutting expenditure, definitely, if your income can...
Are we losing Dr. Edouard Nanianchi? Okay, his Zoom is getting a little bad. Okay, so let me have Professor Eliplim Agloyo also join on this matter, and people give you the examples. They say if you take only 3 ministries like the Agri, Trade and Energy, you have 3 ministers plus 9 deputies. If you are a poor country and you are in austerity, a president who is listening and appears to appreciate what is going on should be merging things and removing people from these places.
And I think to a large extent I agree. And we are in difficult times. It's time for the government to show that they're actually listening and that they care about their citizenry. Again, if they can take significant reductions in their salary, I know they did about 30%, maybe they can do more. Or even say that for the next 6 months or the next 1 year, they're not going to take any salaries. They are going to put their hands to their will to make sure that we build Ghana together. Then people can see that there's a lot of burden sharing. So I agree that we can cut costs further. The number of ministers we have in Ghana, I think, is oversized. For a small country like Ghana, we don't need so many ministers. I think I saw something in the media about the number of communicators at the presidency. It's just too much. And if we cut these numbers, that, like Senor said, it's going to save us a lot of money. And we probably don't need to do a debt restructuring.
Right. Is there an alternative to the DDE?
Okay, thank you, Samson. I think in this current form, the DDE is a heavy deal for anybody to take on. And with this unrestricted Atessa capital, I think Senor also mentions on the numbers. Okay, if you take that deal, you're going to lose about 77%. We also looked at an interesting analysis where myself and my colleague, Dr. Dennis Insapwa, where we looked at if the government has said, okay, I'm not going to give you your face value back, okay, but I won't change the terms of the bond. I'll keep paying your coupon payments, I'll keep paying you on time till the agreed maturity. That deal was actually better than the current DDE. On that deal, investors were losing about 21%. On this current deal, they're losing about 77%. So it's going to be very difficult for anybody to accept this deal. What I think they can do to enhance the deal is to reduce the maturities a bit and increase the coupon payments. Like Simon said, that will mean that the government will get less money, but it will make it more likely that people will participate in the deal. So that's number one. It's also about being innovative in difficult times like this. So before the program, I've been doing some external analysis to see the kind of options that may be feasible. So one of the things I was playing around on my Excel sheet was that if government has said, okay, I'm going to pay you not 100% of your coupons, I'll pay you 60% of the coupons and defer the rest till maturity. Okay. What I'm seeing is that investors will take this deal. It's very attractive. Actually, they don't lose any money. They actually make their money back. Okay, so design is important in what we are doing now. The current deal, I think that is not very attractive for anybody to accept. So that's number one. We need to be more innovative in terms of the design of the domestic debt exchange program. Number two, the African Development Bank has called for the G20 to revive the debt service, DSSI, the debt service suspension initiative. That may help in terms of there being a pause on the debt that we are paying, and that can give us some little fiscal space. Number three, in terms of revenue measures, I still think that the e-levy in its current form is not the best. There's a paper that we wrote at Tessa Capital where I argue that instead of the fixed percentage, it will be better to charge a fixed amount so that people have certainty. Again, the removal of the 100% 100 cities threshold. What that means is that if you send money now, you're going to pay e-levy, no matter the amount. That is going to discourage anybody from using a lot of mobile money. And I don't think the government will achieve its revenue targets. So probably they have to take a second look at the e-levy. Again, I think that we need to engage our external partners. Okay, what is affecting Ghana now? It's not only Ghana. From a report I read from Bloomberg, about 50% or more of African countries are either in debt distress or at high risk of debt distress. Okay, this doesn't serve the interest of anybody. It doesn't serve the interest of Africans. It doesn't serve the interest of the West. And I think that they have a moral obligation to assist us for a number of reasons. Number one of the causes of the crisis we are having is the war in Russia, Ukraine-Russian war. Okay, that has put a heavy burden on us, and it's not our fault. So I think that these countries must come together to support countries that are in high debt distress. Number two, the increase in monetary policy rate by the U.S. Federal Reserve, okay, is also something that is contributing to our current difficulties because the dollar is strengthening and it's making things difficult for us. So I think that these nations have a moral obligation to assist us to come out of these difficulties. If they do, it's going to be better for everybody. So these are some of the things that I think we can do to...
Okay, I'll go for my very final break, and when I return, but I needed you to tell me this. Is it also possible, some economists think, that if government taxes all interest incomes from bond to treasury bill to fixed deposit to all savings by, say, 30%, in addition to expenditure rationalization, not a government that doesn't seem to appreciate that it has to cut down, it has to downsize. People must see that it is doing this before it also asks them to do this kind of things. They suggest that you may get something of the equivalent of what we are seeking to do. So you tax all interest income from bonds to treasury bill to fixed deposits to all savings by 30%, in addition to expenditure rationalization. What do you say about that?
It's one of our proposals.
That's one of the proposals that the individual bondholders you are making?
Well, what we've proposed in our technical conversation is, I think government has actually missed an opportunity because it has had it, it's in the law, for the corporate papers. All the interest for individuals, you withhold 1%, but you're supposed to file it as part of your personal income tax and become subject to 25% at the end of the year. It's never done.
Okay.
So what we've told them is that you actually have fiscal space upfront for you to really maneuver that 25%, not 30% actually.
Okay. And when we return, the question that I'd like Doc to also look at again is what people are saying. And people who are serious and mean real business say that, yes, the finance minister may have survived, a censure in parliament. Yes, the president may not want to remove him, but he must not be leading the process still. And they say that he doesn't have the moral, capacity to be able to lead it. There's an example that is being made that a finance minister who spends in excess of 25 billion for the bank cleanup process must not be the same person to be heard to be talking and leading a debt exchange program. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's the most authoritative news analysis platform, and we've been talking about your bonds and the broke economy and what to do to get out of the situation. We have had Bright Simmons, who started with a very, very, very intriguing, revealing presentation. And Dr. Edu Anyenini also just left us. We were talking to him earlier. We had a problem with his line. He's convener, Pensioner Bondholders Forum, and former Director General of Securities and Exchange Commission. And presently, I still have on Zoom Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwabasin, also Eliplimi Komla Agboyo, who is Associate Professor, Department of Finance, University of Ghana Business School. And Dr. Kingsley is Chief Executive Officer, Ghana Insurance Association. Senyor Hosi is convener, Individual Bondholders Forum. I have one message. I was hoping that the sender could reduce it a bit, but let me read it to you. And this is from one Paul Kumi from Edukrom, and he says, I hate to be a pessimist, but this government had given all manner of promises concerning this debt exchange and has not kept its word. We heard of the bondholders and it failed, the individual bondholders, and it failed. The measures being undertaken by the government, terribly heartless. And is that a sign of reckless decision-making, or simply they do not care about the consequences on the persons to be affected by their decisions? I hear the government expenditure is being cut. Being cut and having been cut are completely two different things. Check most of the government expenditures and you will marvel if those in government are living here in Ghana. These expenditures have been doubled, and even in the face of these challenges, the Vice President is on a promising spree, saying pupils in JHS in Ghana are going to be supplied with free tablets. Are these guys really serious with us? See, Oforiatta could leave the finance ministry soon, and where some of his promises don't hold, he cannot be personally held liable. Meanwhile, it might be his running of the finances of Ghana which would have brought us this worse. And I was asking Eli Klimi, do you subscribe to the view that the finance minister, whatever the situation is untenable, that he should be leading the process?
Well, I think that it's pretty clear that he's having challenges in managing the economy. I think that the definition of a good manager is somebody who not just does well in good times, but was also able to manage the situation in bad times. That's even a better mark of a good manager. So yes, I think that it may be good to have a replacement that will help us, that will send a signal to the capital markets that we are indeed serious. So for example, if you look at what happened in the UK when Kwesi Kwarteng left, there was confidence that the market showed, and the UK is a bit better now. So I think that yes, it may be politically correct and also a smart move in an economic sense for him to be replaced at this time.
Interesting. And the view that I shared, I said some economists believe that a tax regime of sorts would have helped. And people are mentioning property tax. The properties are barely taxed really, and all of these. How do you think all of this just escaped? It's
not an escape. I think that is there. I mean, what we have put before government is that you have existing laws you should enforce. Corporate bonds. So the bonds, the Dachi bonds, the ESLA bonds, and the Cocoa bills, they are all corporate bonds. For individuals, you're subject to 1% withholding tax. You're supposed to file it at the end of the year. And when you file it as part of the end of the year, it means you're subject then to about 25% tax. That is revenue that government should have been making. It has not been making. But government bonds are exempt, and that can't be touched. So what government can do is that, look, now we have existing laws. First of all, take out the individuals out of this pie. They are not part of it. But your existing laws, please go ahead and enforce them. That one, if you don't know, we are bringing it to your knowledge. I pay it. I pay it. And that's how come I got to realize that even the GRA itself was not even aware. So there are gaps in there. Now you take property taxes. If you decided to put your money in bonds, another person decided to put his money in property, but the money that government borrowed was spent for all Ghanaians. Why is it that only me who put my money in my money in bonds should be the one paying? No, that means we all have to pay. So the property tax man too, that property is also part of his investment. Just like my bonds are also part of my investment. You also pay your taxes. So we all have to start contributing to the solution. Government must lead the way with cutting its expenditure. But Ghanaians, we must also start waking up to our civil responsibility.
All right.
We have to improve our tax compliance, our tax enforcement systems. The same Ghanaian who is arguing against government is the same Ghanaian still looking for a friend in the port to try and get some lower duty. All these things must stop. Government must do it. And those who are sitting back and thinking that this is a matter of bondholders alone, forget it. It's never going to be a matter of bondholders alone. There will be equity in dealing with this thing. As government deals with it, so is it that you who put your money in property, you too have to come and deal with it. If you are saying that those of us who put our money in bonds should now let go or lose 80% of our bonds.
Thank you.
Then we should also start sharing your houses, 80% of it, and then giving it to government to pay.
Thank you very much. And as we know, government is looking into 3 baskets. Domestic is looking at the Paris Club membership, where they have already gone and seeking, some reprofiling of the debt, and the foreign bondholders as well. We have had to suspend payment of foreign coupons, etc., to enable the Bank of Ghana to keep its resources. That's what the minister says. They have met with the Paris Club, and they have got the staff level agreement, which we all know, and they are looking to February a deadline in February or end of February to meet the requirement for a common framework to be able to begin approaching the board approval. You know that Eurobond market has been shut to Ghana. This year we can't. Next year, potentially, we can't also go there because we are broke, like bankrupt. So the minister says the IMF deal may be doomed if we don't get at least 80% participation in this bond matter. Not getting 80% and to secure the IMF fund deal, he says, quote, will bring the country into jeopardy. All must therefore sacrifice. What must give? Thank you also very much for keeping your dials here and for watching Newsfile. My outfit, as always, is paid for by Habil's Creditor. They actually make them. You can find them at Adjringano Gate, East Legon, and you can call them 0200 84 1988. Many thanks to our guests, Senior Jose, Convener, Individual Bondholders Forum, Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, Eliklimi Komla Agloyo is Associate Professor, Department of Finance, University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Idua Nanientris, Convener, Pensioner Bondholders Forum, and former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Dr. Kingsley Kwesi Kwaberson is Chief Executive Officer, the Ghana Insurers Association. Have a good afternoon and enjoy your week. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini.